everyone, and welcome back to the Haunted Mario podcast. This is Haunted Mario, and Haunted Peach is joining me today.
Hi, everyone.
We are bringing you today the final podcast episode of 2017. We are actually on episode 17, which is a happy accident, but this will be the final episode of the year 2017, and just as promised, we're going to be going over our Ghosts of America road trip that we took back in July. Now, we've already covered the 3 locations where we actually managed to capture some possible paranormal evidence, and for those videos, if you're interested in hearing the stuff that we captured in that, you can look back at our playlist for Ghosts of America road trip on our YouTube channel, and you can see the evidence reveals for Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and Pea Ridge National Military Park. So if you're interested in hearing what we captured at those locations, definitely check those out. This particular podcast will be covering the places that we didn't manage to capture any possible paranormal evidence, but these were places that we definitely did investigate and or explore on our road trip. I will apologize ahead of time. My voice is rather tired. I've been sick for the last week, and we are recording this before the year's end. As promised, this is just going to be a look back at our biggest adventure yet so far in our paranormal journey. I do want to take a quick moment to just let you all know that we definitely appreciate your support throughout the last 4 years on our journey, and we've met a lot of you on the road, and we are more than grateful for the people that we've met. We love all of you, and this particular episode is going to be dedicated to the memory of my late grandmother, who unfortunately passed away the day before Thanksgiving this year. My grandmother was 91. Her name was Elda Guerra. She was a huge part of my life. She's a big reason why I am the gentle giant that I am. I miss her very much. And so this particular episode is dedicated to her. For the love that she was able to give to me and caring for me my entire life, pretty much. So this is dedicated to you, Grandma. I love you, and I'll miss you forever. Additionally, we do want to honor the memory of another person, a very important person that was lost this year. A lot of you may have known her, and if you did, she definitely brought huge life and sense of adventure, which we are very thankful for, and we also want to honor her memory as well. Her name was Diane Maldonado. She unfortunately passed away this year as well, and we definitely miss her laughter, and her spirit of adventure. So this episode is also dedicated to her memory as well. May they both rest in peace, and with all the love that we can provide them in their memory and carrying on in their memory and honoring them, if we could just have a quick moment of silence for both of them. Okay, they will both be very missed and loved in their memory, and the world is a better place because they existed in it. Okay, so let's begin here and talk about our Ghosts of America road trip. Now, there were many locations that Haunted Peach and I got to explore. We actually stopped at least in one location of every state that we had a chance to. This trip actually was in total about 7 days, so we had to really be very conscious of our time management. So while we did get to explore some of these places, there were locations where we didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of what we wanted to do, but we definitely made the most of our time at these locations. Now, the first location that we want to highlight is Tombstone, Arizona. It's probably one of the most haunted locations in Arizona. The three biggest, most notable locations in Tombstone are Boot Hill Graveyard, the OK Corral, and the most infamous of all, the Birdcage Theater. So this was actually our first stop on the actual road trip. We had a couple of hours to explore the Birdcage Theater as well as Boot Hill Graveyard. Now, Hunter Peach, when we got to Tombstone, Arizona, what was the first striking thing about that location that stood out to you?
The first thing that stuck out to me when we arrived was that everything was stuck in the Old West, being wise and look.
Yeah, everything from the OK Corral, or at least on that main street, was very, very much Old West. In fact, there were cowboys walking around, and I remember we took a picture with one of the cowboys, and Victor Westcott was with us. He asked one of the cowboys if he could grab one of the pistols. What did the guy tell him?
He told him, no, that is a real pistol.
Yeah. he basically denied him of that, I guess. The revolver that he had in his holster was actually a real revolver. But we had a lot of fun there. We went to the Birdcage Theater, and we managed to get just a little bit of history about the location. So I'm going to play a quick video of some of the history that was shared. Here it is.
It's a National Historic Landmark because it's one of the only original buildings left here in Tombstone.
Wow.
There were fires that happened both in 1881 and 1882 that destroyed most of the town. That wasn't unusual at all for old mining towns. But you can see how thick the walls are here. They're made out of adobe, and that is what saved it. The fire just kind of kissed the outside of it. So then it was locked, sealed, and closed for 45 years when mining had come to an end, but they reopened it and left it as original as they could, and that's what makes it the National Historic Landmark. And if you came in through one of these four doors, they were open at all times, and this partition wall wasn't here, so you would be able to see back to the gambling area. Above that are the cribs where the ladies would entertain, and in the back is the theater stage. And on the back stage, we have the Black Maria. That's the Boot Hill hearse that ferried everyone who needed to be buried between 1881 and 1917. That's the most valuable antique we have. At the time, it was purchased for $18,000, so it was outrageous even then. But now it's valued at right around $2 million.
Okay, that was a quick video just sharing some of the history and facts about the Birdcage Theater. We definitely got to do sort of a self-guided walking tour of the inside of the Birdcage Theater. Do you remember how much it was?
It was $15.
Yeah, it was like $15 per person, something like that. But there was no real time limit, but we were able to go inside and explore and look around at all of the Old West antiques that were in there. But probably the most notable one was the very famous poker table. And what was famous about the poker table, Haunted Peach?
It had the longest playing poker game. I think it was 7 or 6 years, and it was $1,000 buy-in at minimum.
Yeah, it was like 6 to 8 years long. This long poker game that the likes of Wyatt Earp, the very infamous Wyatt Earp, played, and yeah, it was $1,000 minimum buy-in to join in the game. It was very cool to see these antiques and parts of American history all in one location. I remember that even some of the pieces of wood inside of the Birdcage Theater still had bullet holes, original bullet holes from some of the gunfights that actually happened there. But yeah, Birdcage Theater was definitely a really cool location, a great way to start the road trip. It's a location that we intend on returning to and hopefully doing a private group investigation sometime in the future. If not next year, then the following year. After we left the Birdcage Theater, just wanted to keep it in the Old West style, had a drink in the saloon, and then we headed over to Boot Hill Graveyard. Haunted Peach, what do you remember the most about Boot Hill Graveyard?
There were a couple things I remember from there. The first was a child's grave where it had actual money underneath the rocks placed on it, as well as a bad thunderstorm coming in.
Yeah, this was during the summer, and apparently this was during Arizona's monsoon season. I think, I'll have to be honest, I think a majority of our road trip was spent at some point in a thunderstorm or a storm of some type, which was pretty crazy. It was like every state we went to had some kind of storm system that we had to deal with at one point or another. But the grave with the child's grave with the money on it, we're not really sure what the entire meaning of that is. We didn't really get to look into the history of that or the meaning of that, but that's something we would like to explore later on. The other thing that stuck out to me was how many unknown grave sites there were. You would see gravestones just scattered everywhere along the graveyard that would just simply say unknown. That was a pretty lasting impression that I had of that location. So Tombstone, Arizona was actually really cool. It's definitely a place that we would love to return to in the future. Unfortunately, we didn't get to check out the OK Corral. We actually ran out of time and had to head to our next destination. The next day, we actually headed back on the road from Arizona, and we headed out to New Mexico. Now, New Mexico was an interesting state to go through, but our main objective in going through New Mexico was to go and see Roswell. Now, Roswell is a very infamous site for the 1950s UFO crash landing around Area 51. I am interested in the whole alien theory and UFO theories out there. I don't exactly believe in all of them, but I do find the mystery of it pretty entertaining, and it's something that sparks my curiosity. So I was very excited to be able to have an opportunity to go to Roswell and have Roswell be one of the sites that we get to explore. Haunted Peach, on the other hand, she doesn't share my affinity for the whole UFO thing. So this really was more of a location for me to kind of nerd out on that type of thing. Unfortunately, 2 out of the 3 things that we really wanted to do at this location unfortunately didn't pan out for us. There were 3 main things that we wanted to do. The first was to check out the International UFO History Museum. The second thing we wanted to do was eat at the famous UFO cafe. And the third thing was to hopefully go and see the crash site, or at least try to get near the crash site at Roswell. But when we arrived there, we found out very quickly we miscalculated on some things. Out of the 3 things that we wanted to do there, which 2 did we completely fail on?
The 2 that we failed on was eating at the famous UFO cafe and going to the crash landing site.
Yeah, unfortunately those 2 things did not pan out at all. A big reason why those things didn't really work was because, unfortunately, I did not do enough research to be able to fully plan out this particular location. So a big majority of that failure fell on my mistake. Mistake 1 being the cafe. I was unaware that the UFO cafe had actually closed. It closed its doors about 2 or 3 years ago. So this location is no longer around. We unfortunately were not able to eat at the cafe. So for those that know me, will know that I am actually a diabetic. by the time we had reached Roswell, my blood sugar was already low. And because we could not find the cafe and subsequently found out that the cafe no longer existed, we had to resort to picking the closest place that we could find to the UFO Museum. Now there is a restaurant that is located right across the street from the UFO Museum parking lot. It's a Mexican restaurant. I won't tell you the name because honestly I can't even remember the name. And I'm not trying to dog on the restaurant, but you have to kind of look at it from my shoes. The disappointment of not getting to eat at the UFO cafe, having to resort to a restaurant we had no prior knowledge of because of my diabetic situation. And honestly, the restaurant looked promising from the outside, because what was the one thing, Haunted Peach, that we saw when we entered Roswell? What was very apparent about that city?
What was very apparent about that city was that they embraced the alien theme.
Yes, the alien theme. The whole UFO alien theme is very much embraced throughout the entire city. So much so that you can't go a single block around the main area of Roswell without seeing some kind of reference to aliens or UFOs. One of the things that I got a really good kick out of was the street lights. The street lights are like the old style lanterns, but all of the lights were painted with alien eyes, so that when they light up they look like glowing aliens. And I thought that was pretty cool. Now, going with the scene, this Mexican restaurant had it had alien mariachis painted on the side. So I was totally digging the theme. I was like, alright, okay, keep a positive attitude. Let's go to this restaurant and eat. My goodness, that food was so awful. Blood sugar level balanced aside, the food sucked. We went over to the museum, and the museum, as you can see from the footage, was kind of cool. It was very gimmicky. There was a lot of information about conspiracy theories from back in the 50s, and even some UFO conspiracy theories from the present, and even some from the ancient past. Sort of delving into that ancient alien theory thing. So the gimmick was kind of cool to look at, but all in all, it was just kind of meh. It was disappointing. So we thought, okay, well, the UFO Museum is a disappointment. The cafe doesn't exist anymore. Let's see if we can check out the crash site. Well, let me tell you, trying to find directions to the crash site or asking anyone in Roswell where the crash site might be is like finding a needle in a fucking haystack. And unfortunately, no one could tell us where to go. Don't even bother looking online, because Google will say it doesn't even exist. And blogs weren't very helpful, unfortunately. And because we were on such a time constraint, we didn't have the time to just sit there and try to navigate throughout Roswell to find it. So we unfortunately had to cut that portion of the trip short and continue on to our next location. So all in all, Roswell, for as much as I was hyped over it, Roswell was a huge disappointment. Now that's not to say, I'm not harping on Roswell saying that it's a waste of time. I think if we had more time to explore the city and the mythology and the history behind the city and the UFO theories and the alien conspiracies, I think that would make for a really cool weekend trip. But we didn't have a day or two. We had less than 3 hours. So it was Roswell was the only low point of the entire trip that we had. But yeah, that brings us to our next location. We move on to a location which was really cool to check out, and possibly one of the most dangerous locations we went to, and that was in Texas, in Abilene, Texas. This is a place called Fort Phantom Hill. Now, the name itself is probably one of the coolest names for a location to go to. This is an old west military and trading outpost from way back in the frontier days in the 1800s. The Americans set up this trading outpost to trade between the Mexicans and the Native Americans, but it was also a military outpost. So when you explore this location, what you'll find is a lot of ruins, basically. It's out in the middle of the country, and Haunted Peach, what was so dangerous about this particular location? What made it so dangerous?
What was most dangerous about this were fire ants, recluse spiders, and rattlesnakes. They had signs posted around the trail that said, "Beware of rattlesnakes."
Yeah. So the first thing that became very apparent when we got to this location was the recluse spiders. So when you arrive there, there's a small parking lot you can park in, and you park. And this place is free. It's open from dawn until dusk, and you can basically walk the grounds and explore the trails. It's all open. You can't go into the actual buildings that are in there, but there's basically a small, tiny visitor center with an overhang, and it has restrooms on either side. And so I walked into the restroom, and I look up, and in every corner of that bathroom there were giant webs, and each web had about 2 brown recluse spiders, about the size of silver dollars. They were gigantic, and I am actually an arachnophobe. I am very much fearful of spiders. If there's any true fear that I have, it's spiders, and Haunted Peach can definitely attest to that. My fear of spiders is absolute. Yeah, seeing those spiders, I was like, nope, and walked right out of there. And when I walked out, I looked up at the overhang, and the entire ceiling and all of the posts were covered with webs. There were probably hundreds of brown recluse spiders there, and they were gigantic. And I was just kind of like freaking out. But we decided to explore the place anyway. We'd traveled all these miles. We had to explore it. So we put on our bug spray, and we ventured on the trails and checked out Fort Phantom Hill. We went down to some of the old frontier wagons. There were a couple of cannons that were still there, left over from way back in the 1800s. We even did an EVP session at a couple of the locations there as well. So this is a very cool place to explore. Now, we didn't manage to capture anything there, but Haunted Peach, what did you think overall of Fort Phantom Hill?
I thought it was pretty cool, to be honest, to see all the ruins of the buildings, some of them that had a couple chimneys that still stood, and the wagon that was left there as well. That's pretty cool. I could have done without the message and the warning of the rattlesnakes, the fire ants, and definitely without the spiders.
Yeah, that was definitely the dangers that we had to face out there. And all along the trails that we encountered several thousand fire ants. We were very lucky to not get stung or bit by anything while we were out there. So we counted our blessings, but we definitely got to explore this location for at least a couple of hours. We basically had to tread lightly, but it was very fun to explore a piece of old frontier history. So from here, we basically traveled through Oklahoma and ended up in Arkansas, where we checked out Pea Ridge National Military Park. Pea Ridge National Military Park, we have an evidence reveal video. You can check that out with our Ghosts of America road trip videos. But we're going to move on to the next location. Now, this location was one that we were pretty hesitant on going to. because we had read a lot of bad reviews about the one specific person that runs the tours at this location. So we were very cautious about wanting to spend our time going to a location that we ultimately would not have had fun at. And this brings us to probably one of the most famous locations in the U.S., the Bell Witch Cave. Now, the Bell Witch Cave is very infamous for a legend about the Bell Witch. Now, in fact, the movie The Blair Witch Project is based on the Bell Witch legend, and the city that this cave is located in, it's called Adams, Tennessee. This is an old town that really embraces the legend of the Bell Witch. So we went to this location. We actually had decided the day before we weren't going to go, but last minute decision. This was the eve of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium investigation. So we just went on a whim. It was incredibly humid outside. I mean, we walked out and it was just instant. It was miserable hot. But we went out there, we asked about the tour, and we definitely got to do a tour of the Bell Witch Cave. And as you can see from some of the pictures and footage here, we definitely got to go inside the cave. What were your thoughts overall about being in the Bell Witch Cave and the stories that you heard from that location?
It was honestly, because that's something that's been on our bucket list for such a long time. I was kind of blown away with being in there. And first off, I want to say that cave is nice and cool. There's no misery in that cave.
Yeah, that cave was actually relatively very cool. And I mean, the moment you started to head out toward the entrance, then you could feel the heat. But when you got in about 15 feet into the cave, it was nice and cool. Almost like it was air conditioned. Now it's not, but yeah, it was definitely cool inside there. But aside from the temperature, were there any stories that stuck out to you?
Well, there are a ton of stories. There were also some cool fossils in the entrance of the cave that they were showing us. I think she was saying that it was underwater or something at one point.
Yeah, so what I guess it wasn't so much that it was underwater, but the cave gets flooded during heavy rainy seasons because of where it's positioned. The cave is actually positioned on the side of a cliff. You have to you go down this steep hill and then you go into the side of the cliff. That's where the cave opening is. But apparently this cave is several miles long. And we only got to go into it maybe 1,000, 2,000 feet, if that, into the cave. A big reason for that was just alluding back to the flooding, and they have to close down the cave because it's dangerous. But there is a point where you can go back into the cave. You'll reach this particular rock formation, and this rock formation is actually really creepy. But apparently, once a cave is flooded, if you go past that rock area, you're going into waist to shoulder high water levels. So we weren't allowed to go back there. We only went up to that specific point. Now, I'm going to show a picture of that rock formation in a moment. Well, let's bring up the picture now and have you guys look at it. Haunted Peach, what does that look like to you?
It looks like a demon.
Yeah, it's one of the scariest rock formations we've ever seen. It looks like a devil or some kind of demon looking at you. Now, obviously, this is just pareidolia and your mind forming an image out of something, because that's just what us as humans are familiar with. It's not actually a demon, but the way it looks, the way it's formed, and the position of it make it look like that. So the Bell Witch Cave was really cool. I highly suggest that if you go out to Adams, Tennessee and explore the Bell Witch Cave, that you definitely request that the female be the tour guide. Now, I don't remember her name, and I don't remember the guy's name. He seemed okay. He was actually preoccupied when we got there, trying to take care of a red wasp nest which was pretty crazy because those wasps were huge. And that's just kind of funny ongoing thing. If you check out our blooper video, you'll see that Haunted Peach actually had quite a few bits of trouble with wasps throughout the entire trip.
Let me just say this. They had it out for me. Okay? They chased me. I don't know what I did to them.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. There's a couple of clips that we managed to share during the blooper video. So check that out if you want to see that. But yeah, he was taking care of the wasps, and we got to have the tour guide was his wife. And she was incredibly informative. The ghost stories that we heard from that location were incredible. Now, we had to agree before we went in. We were told that we were not allowed to record any audio in there. So while we do have a few tiny bits of video here, we can't really share too much of that. We definitely can't share any of the audio, but rest assured, if you have a chance to explore this location, we highly recommend it. The ghost stories from this place are incredible. So if you ever get a chance, definitely check it out. Haunted Peach and I definitely recommend it. So that after the Bell Witch Cave, that same night we did the Waverly Hills investigation overnight, and that went into the following day. The following day, after doing the Waverly Hills investigation, we went to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And so the day after the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, we went to two locations. Now these were both in Missouri. The first location we went to was Battle of Lexington. And this was in Lexington, Missouri. This was the site of a Civil War battle that took place. If you're into Civil War history, this is definitely a place that you should check out. The Battle of Lexington location also has a small museum with a lot of artifacts, including, from, as you can see in the video, some of the medical tools that were used on the battlefield on soldiers. One of the other locations is a memorial site. Haunted Peach, do you remember the memorial site that was outside of the museum just down the road?
Yes, it was for 5 soldiers with no names. They had it basically just a little area chained off where they were buried.
Yeah, it was 5 unnamed soldiers. Now, they weren't actually buried there, but this is a memorial site for them. And I guess their bodies were buried elsewhere. But that was a really cool place to see and read up on some of the history of that location. Additionally, we actually did an EVP session at that site, and we weren't able to come back with anything substantial from that EVP session, mainly because of the cicadas. Now, the weather was such that I think it was affecting the cicadas, because every time there would be even a little bit of moisture in the air, the cicadas would start going off really loudly. You know, that was it was a cool location. If you're interested in Civil War history, definitely check this place out. But that brings us to one of our favorite locations of the entire trip, and that is Fort Osage. Now, Fort Osage is actually located in Sibley, Missouri, and I believe this is south of where Battle of Lexington is. It's much like Battle of Lexington. Fort Osage is located along the Missouri River. And Fort Osage is a fort that was established during the very early frontier days of the Lewis and Clark expedition, including Sacagawea. So it's very cool to take a step back into that past and look and explore the different areas of the fort. And there were definitely some ghost stories that we got from this location. Now, Haunted Peach, what was one of your favorite parts about checking out Fort Osage?
My favorite part about checking that out was that it was located by a river. It was beautiful from the overlook. Yeah,
so it's right along the Missouri River. The view of the river is spectacular, and there's this white bridge You can see in the video there's this white bridge that runs along over the river, but it was such a beautiful setting, and then even just being able to take a look inside of the buildings was spectacular in and of itself. This is definitely one of the coolest places that we went to. The docent that was in the main visitor center, she actually shared with us some ghost stories of some of the people that work there. So we're going to play a little video here. This is us talking about some of the ghost stories from that location. Here it is. So there are some reported haunts here. We were talking to the docent in the education center. Some of the workers here have experienced some strange paranormal activity. Everything from phantom footsteps to shadow figures. Haunted Peach, do you recall one of the stories in one of the books about the hauntings that are found here?
One of the stories that I read in one of the books was a claim of someone watching a man walk by in accurate period clothing. And when they went to look for him, they couldn't find him. He disappeared.
This place we thought was part of the Civil War. Actually, it wasn't. We were incorrect. It was erected by Lewis and Clark during their famous expedition across America. So it's located right along the Missouri River, and a lot of history here. It wasn't active for very long, but it served as a trading outpost between the Americans, of course, during the frontier ages, and the Osage Native American tribe. So a lot of trade happened here, but this, I believe, it was abandoned in 1827. So incredible. We're walking among American history here. Okay, that was just a short video of myself and Haunted Peach talking about some of the ghost stories from that location. But there was an individual that we ran into at Fort Osage in the factory that managed to share some more stories with us. His name is Mike, and Mike was incredibly welcoming, and he managed to share some stories with us. Now, I'll let you know ahead of time that his accent is very heavy. It's a very heavy southern accent, so I have done my best to subtitle what he's saying. So enjoy some of the frontier history as well as some of the ghost stories from this location. Here it is.
We have a young man buried in our cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Zenas Leonard. And Leonard came from back east when he was 17, 18. He comes out here and he can write. And that is kind of unusual in boys that age.
Mm-hmm.
And so he will become the scribe for Fremont,
Yeah.
and for Bonneville and those people. And he traveled with a guy named Joe Walker. And Joe Walker was the first sheriff of Jackson County, Missouri, and that's where you're at now.
Oh, wow.
And actually, Walker Pass is named for Joe Walker out in the Rockies. And he's buried in California.
Really?
But, yeah, he retired out there. He was some kind of a bar owner and marshal or something. But he's traveled. Joe Walker's a man who does what he damn well pleases. And this is a military expedition. And young Zenas Leonard, who, like I say, is 17, 18 years old, is traveling with Walker. And they have been given orders that they're not to cross the international borders because we got a little bitty army and we can't afford to be going to war with nobody.
Yeah.
But Joe Walker, being Joe Walker, he goes into Spanish California, where Zenas Leonard says they spend several days racing horses with the Spanish Californians, who he finds to be lazy, stupid, and indolent. However, he says they are the best horse thieves he's ever seen, and they're superb hands with a knife. And those are both high praise at this time in history. So,
Wow.
and he ought to know about the horse thieving thing, because that's what him and Joe Walker could do. They're going to steal a bunch of horses in Spanish, take them over to Santa Fe and sell them. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
some weird stuff?
that's what they tell me. I have seen I have heard voices in this building.
Really?
When I know there could be nobody in this building, and it could have been the wind whistling through. This is an old building and it's leaky, and I've only had one. I've been here for 15 years, and I've only had one spooky thing happen to me, and that when you go upstairs, there are 3 windows upstairs, and we're supposed to close those windows before we leave. And my partner, who just retired, we're both guitar players, not great guitar players, but guitar players, and we would sit out by the fire pit after work. We would beat on the guitars. And one night we looked up, and the 3 windows were open up there. And I ain't no rule follower. It's okay with me. But like I say, we are supposed to close all them windows up. And George Sibley was the man who ran this in the 1800s and was here for the better part of 20 years, for most of its active years.
Yeah.
And my partner, he was a rule follower, and he looked up and he said, "Damn, we need to close them windows. But it's July, there's not a cloud in the sky." And I say, "No, Phil, let George close those windows." And it wasn't 5 minutes later that the window over the bedroom closed, the one above our heads closed, the one on the corner closed.
Wow.
And it was like there was a padlock on the door. Nobody was in here.
Wow.
And my partner, being the brave guy he is, said, "We need to go check that out." And I said, we need to play another song. That's what we need to do. So,
Wow. Any other stories you might be able to think of?
oh yeah, the probably the one that was one of the spookier things was a lady, actually a Californian, came in here one day, and we know how weird you people can be. So, and she comes in and she said that when she was downstairs, and when you go downstairs, everything below the red line is that foundation. And there's a back door, and it used to open. We don't open it anymore because we're trying to keep people off our hillside. But she came up and she said, "For just a minute, I could have swore that I saw a sopping little wet lady holding a baby down there." And we didn't think anything about it. We just kind of blew it off. And in the wintertime, we mostly are digging into old letters and records and stuff. And he pulls up George Sibley, the factor, the trade agent here's journal, and he's going through it. And there is a letter that says, to his brother, that says, what a shame it was that, I think it was Robert Smith, may have been John Smith, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a soldier here. And he had been sent back to St. Louis to get out of the Army. And Sibley writes to his brother and says what a shame it was, because his wife and infant son leave the fort by boat, and it overturned and drowned them both a mile down the river.
Wow.
So yeah, that
That's creepy.
it is.
And sad. Incredibly sad. And I'm sorry, what was your name again?
It is Mike.
Mike, I'm Mario.
Glad to meet
This is my
you.
wife, Cassandra.
Now we just had a bunch of ghost hunters here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've done it 2 or 3 times.
Oh,
and they've come up with some moving lights, and we've had flashlights turned on just for the asking, and they've got some noise. They told me it sounded like words. It didn't sound like words to me, but they were sure it was. But
yeah, we're ghost hunters too. We're from California, and we've basically gone almost all the way across the country, going to different places. So, thank you for sharing. All right, that was some of the ghost stories from Fort Osage. A Haunted Peach. When we got there, did you ever expect that they would just give us permission to do paranormal investigation at our own free will?
No, I honestly didn't. I thought it was we were gonna have to speak with someone else higher than the people there.
Yeah, no, and Mike gave us a free rein to explore, and if we wanted to do some EVP recordings, we could, and we definitely took the opportunity to do so. We actually even did a Facebook Live EVP session in the guard tower of Fort Osage, and that was really cool. Unfortunately, we didn't capture anything, but the experience of doing that was actually really cool. Now, aside from exploring the paranormal aspect of this location, Haunted Peach, what else did this place have to offer?
Well, not only was it the old buildings and the stories that they could tell us, but there was, in the museum, they had a ton of different things. They had I don't remember how old the canoe was, but they had a canoe in there.
Yeah, it was a canoe from the Native Americans had built, but it was like 2,000 years old or something like that.
Yeah, something like
It's
that.
just gigantic canoe made out of a tree, and I think it's at least a couple thousand years old. Along with that, there was one of the original cannons from the American Revolution, which was freaking amazing to see up close. But yeah, Fort Osage, if you're in Sibley, Missouri, definitely check this place out. It is haunted. It offers a look into some very, very important American history from our past in the frontier days, from the exploration of Lewis and Clark, the Osage Native Americans. There's even a cemetery that you can explore just down the road on the grounds of Fort Osage. And it offers one of the most spectacular views of the Missouri River. So all in all, Fort Osage was definitely one of our top 5 locations that we got to check out throughout the entire trip. So we definitely highly recommend it. Now the next 3 places that we got to check out were actually on the western side of the country. So we blasted through Kansas and made it to Colorado. And early the next morning, we went to a place called Bent's Old Fort. And this is in La Junta, Colorado. Now this is a location, again, another one of those trading/military outposts from way back in the frontier days. It was used to trade with the Mexicans and the Native Americans of that area. And this was just one of those places where we got to really explore the fort and look at some really cool pieces of history, some original even Native American artwork. As you can see from the video here, it was very interesting to see that this particular piece of Native American history told a story within that location. And we ended up talking to one of the docents there, and he gave us some history about this particular location. Now, where Fort Osage embraced the ghost stories, this particular individual was on the opposite end. He's not a big believer in the haunting tales of this particular location, but it was very interesting to hear the stories that he had to tell about this location. So here's that video.
That's cool.
That's an original piece of history for them.
Oh wow. This right here? This
It's an Zelkite called Winter Count.
Winter?
It contains a Plains Indian picture history. The paintings depict annual events like the meteor shower in 18.
Oh, I see it right
called
here.
The Night the Stars Fell. The murder of Charles Bent, an outbreak of measles and whooping cough which ravaged the southern.
Wow. Right, but nothing like, oh, I saw.
No, I've not seen protoplasm or poltergeist. Nobody's tapped me on the shoulder. You know,
Yeah.
Some people say they've heard footsteps in the
Yeah.
evenings.
But that could be the wood.
That could
yeah.
be the wood. But,
Right.
and also in the winter time when we've had things going on and we've some of us have spent the night. They say you can hear noises, but I attribute that to the fact that the fireplaces have been going all day.
Oh,
Ah, yeah.
So,
that meant-
but
Never seen like.
I have sort of a logical explanation for things
Yeah. We're
instead of a mystical explanation for things.
Right.
I sort of deal with the solid,
Yeah.
not the,
Ethereal.
yeah.
Right.
So,
We're the same.
but some people say they hear footsteps, they, feel presence, but
No reports of we've seen William
no.
walking the grounds or.
No. Dead people showing up, that would be George Bent, the brother of William, or Owl Woman, his wife. They died here at the fort.
Oh. Well, then who was Charles?
1847.
Or was that
Charles is another brother.
another brother? How many brothers did he have?
Well, there was a total of five Bent boys that came from that were born in St. Louis or thereabouts.
Ah, okay.
4 of them came out here.
Okay.
1 joined the military. 1 joined the Navy.
And Charles was one of the who was murdered?
Charles is the oldest. He was murdered in Taos. And then there was William, who is the owner, operator, resident here at the fort. Then there was George and Robert, which were younger brothers. They were not part of the company.
Okay.
They were here, but they weren't part of the Bent St. Vrain Company.
Did they ever find out who murdered Charles?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they did?
Oh yeah. It's during the Taos uprising.
Oh, okay.
Some of the Taos citizens and Taos Indians that were inflamed by the fact that the U.S. government now controlled, that Mexican province. They were upset with the American presence, and they took it out on whoever they could, and Charles was one of them.
Wow.
He wasn't the only one that was murdered.
Wow.
How did they kill him?
He was decapitated.
Oh,
Wow.
nice. Okay. Wow.
Well, because we were looking at
You're looking at
the tapestry,
winter
yeah.
the winter. Yeah.
That had all the Native American
Yeah.
things like the meteor shower and whatnot, which is
Yeah.
pretty impressive. I've never seen something
He
like
was
that.
attacked at his home. Initially shot, stabbed. His wife and others that were there at the house drug him back inside and into a back bedroom where they hacked a hole through the wall to exit into another adjacent house. And the kids and the wives got through, and they were trying to get William or Charles through when they broke into the house and drug him back through.
Wow.
And he was shot a couple more times, stabbed, throat was cut, decapitated, and scalped.
Wow.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they didn't like him
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Although he was, a couple of them that were convicted of his murder were, he had helped support and found jobs for.
Yeah, it seems like the Bents had good relations with
Yeah.
those that they traded with, so that's really
But there
odd.
was some, in Taos and Santa Fe that resented the Americanos and, having the wealth that they had
Right.
and the power that they had. And then when Kearny came through with the Army of the West and, exceeded his authority because Kearny did not have authorization to appoint a governor. He appointed William the governor and a bunch of other Anglos or Anglo hangers-on, friends of the Anglos, to all the important positions.
Wow.
Sheriff and judge and all these other jobs that Kearny didn't have the right to appoint. That's something the Senate has. But he exceeded his authority by doing it, and basically Charles paid part of the price.
Wow. That's sad, actually. That's really sad. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
My name is Mario, by the way.
John.
John, nice to meet you.
Cassie.
This is my wife.
Nice to meet you.
And
Okay, that was just some of the history that he shared with us. He was a very nice guy. He had a wealth of knowledge to share with us about that location. Definitely a lot more stories than we ended up recording, but that was one in particular that we wanted to share with you. Haunted Peach, what do you remember the most about Bent's old fort?
Well, besides the majestic cats that were there.
Yeah, there were some very large cats that were there that they almost looked like lynx cats. But anyway, besides the cats, what else did you find was awesome about this location?
The buffalo skin that they had hung up that had the prediction I think it was predictions or it was the history.
It was history. It was the Native American history of that, and as you saw in the video prior, and as the docent alluded to, that particular buffalo skin depicted different things. As you can see in the video here again, that it depicts like a meteor shower, murder, and all kinds of different things. If you really pause to look at it, you can see all the different stories that it tells. But that was definitely one of the coolest parts. And just outside this fort, probably maybe 100 yards down the walking trail, was a small cemetery. And this cemetery actually only has one standing headstone there. And we did an EVP session there, but we had to cut it short because we were running out of time and had to leave. We didn't capture anything there, unfortunately, but hey, if you're in La Junta, Colorado, other than the Stanley Hotel, which was a stop that we couldn't go to, I highly recommend going to this location and learning about more of the history of the frontier age and the Native Americans of that area. So let's move on to our second to last location of the trip, and this was in Bluff, Utah. It is Bluff Fort, another old western frontier location. It's a place that we arrived to late in the day. We actually arrived after it was closed, and although we were able to explore the grounds, we weren't able to go into any visitor center or check out some of the inner cabins and stuff that we wanted to. But while we were exploring there, something very interesting happened. Haunted Peach, while we were exploring, what happened and what did that result in?
Well, Haunted Mario went to go get some more pictures, and I was taking a look at like this Apache dome. It was like this home that they had built.
It was adobe. It was like an adobe dome or something like that.
It was something like that. I don't remember.
Oh no, it wasn't Apache. It was the Ute.
The Utes.
The Ute Native Americans of that area
Yes.
built these dirt dome-shaped dwellings.
They had signs on them, but you had gone to go take some pictures, and I was taking a look at it, and I heard someone talking, and I thought, maybe they were just checking to see what exactly we were doing there. Out comes this nice lady, and she's talking on her cell phone, and I immediately apologized to her because I thought she was coming to say we couldn't be there or that they were closed. And it turns out she was just talking to the caretaker in the back, and they were pulling out cookie dough to make for the next day. This lady was so sweet and so kind that she offered to show us in a couple of the houses that were locked, and she started speaking to us about the history of everything.
Yes, and this lady's name was Anne. She approached Haunted Peach, as she had said, and offered to show us some of the cabins that are located on this particular historic site, and even offered to show us inside one of the teepees and inside of that dirt dome dwelling that the Ute Native Americans used. She took it upon herself to and go out of her way to give us the history, even though we were very late showing up to this location, and it was just very sweet of her. She was super nice, and we are so very thankful that she was courteous enough to do this for us. So in the light of her willingness to share that history with us, we would also like to share some of that history with you. So here is a short video of some of the history that she shared with us about this location. Here it is.
It's surrounded by the Ute Nation, and so the pioneers that settled here, they came in April of 1880, and they were called by church leaders to come here and try to make peace with the Navajo Nation and the Native Americans, and they were called mostly from the southwestern part of the state, St. George and Anchorage and Cedar City, that area. And but the only way they could find through here that wasn't really long was to come through. Well, they had to go through. There was a big rocky area, and there was the only passage they could find through these, tall cliffs and rocky area was a little crevice between two rocks. In fact, I've got a picture of it here. I'll show you. And so they literally had to use black powder and pick an axe to blast their way through and widen that little crevice, to make a bigger, an area big enough to get the wagons through. Wow. And that, they thought they could make the journey, in about 6 weeks, and it ended up taking 6 months.
Wow.
And so at the bottom of this crevice, and this is it right here, right now it's Lake Powell.
Oh, wow.
But at the bottom of it was the Colorado River back then. And you can see, things have overgrown, rocks have fallen, and so the roadway that they made to go down. Anyway, it was. You can see it was quite narrow, and so that's what they had. Have you ever been to Lake Powell?
Mm-mm.
Lake Powell. It's a beautiful lake, man-made now, and. But you have these high cliffs, all over, and so they had to go down through that, and that was really hard. And then when they got to this area, Comb Ridge, have you passed by anything that shows you where Comb Ridge is? It's
Not yet.
Out this way. But again, they had some real, kind of bluffs, these areas around here, the rocky areas they called bluffs. So again, they thought, well, how are they going to get through that? But they found one place they were able to go up, but it was so steep it took 7 span of horses to get the wagons up. So it was really a hard trek. And no lives were lost. 2 babies were born during that 6-month trip. But they settled here in the little town of Bluff. And I think there was one man who was shot by an Indian, when they first came, but they were able to avoid, war parties and talk them out of a few tense times. And within a few years, their theory was feed them, don't fight them. In a few years, they'd made peace well enough that at first the cabins out here are just replicas. There's one on the west side that's an original, but they lived in a kind of a fort-shaped area. That's why it's called Bluff Fort. If it said Fort Bluff, it would have been a military occupation. But when the fort comes after the name, then it's just a settlement. And so it was called Bluff Fort just because they had their little cabins in a fort shape. After several years, they felt safe enough that they branched out into lots. And if you drive, I don't know if you're parked on this side of the building, but if you just drive a block north and kind of just go around, you'll see some of the older 2-story rock homes are actually the pioneer homes.
Wow.
And they're owned by other people now. But, so anyway, a lot of the descendants, one of the descendants lives just across the street in kitty corner that way in an old home, in their great-grandfather's home. But in 1996, a lot of the descendants got together and wanted to rebuild this as a historic site in honor of their ancestors.
Wow.
So that's kind of what it's all about.
All right, and that was some of the history of Bluff Fort. So we actually got to explore, inside the teepee, inside of the Ute dwellings, and even one of the oldest cabins that's located, the original cabin that's located on that site as well. Her husband actually joined in a little later on, and he also gave us some history and access to different places in that location. So we're forever grateful for that. It made the experience of going to this location that much more awesome, and we're forever grateful for that. And if you are ever in southern Utah, definitely go to Bluff Fort. There's a lot of history that you can learn from this location. A very important thing about checking out these purported haunted locations is learning the history of each location. You know, the United States is a very young country compared to the rest of the world, but there is so much rich history to delve into all across the United States, and you can find gems of locations like these, like Bluff Fort, where you can go to and learn and get that enriching culture of what came before that has led to the present day and the things that we enjoy and the freedoms that we enjoy now in the modern day of the United States. So definitely highly recommend this location. So that brings us to the last location of our trip. So we went full circle and ended up back in Arizona. And we actually went somewhere that Haunted Peach and I had both been to separately in our childhoods, and that is the Grand Canyon. But this was our first time going to the Grand Canyon together. And can I say that as a kid, I definitely did not appreciate the sheer scope of how beautiful the Grand Canyon actually is. Definitely going as an adult, I appreciated the aspect of such a worldly creation, being there standing at the edge of a cliff and looking out into the world and seeing this giant hole in the ground, but also taking in all the beauty of it. It was incredible. We went to the North Rim and explored some of the trails out there. And Haunted Peach, what are your thoughts about the Grand Canyon?
It was gorgeous. It was actually a lot better than what I remembered as a kid. The trail to the Walhalla ruins is actually quite shorter than what I thought it would be, but we also had a creepy raven watching us.
Yeah, so we so a part of our exploration of the Grand Canyon led us to this place called the Walhalla Ruins, and you have to drive about about an hour to get there from the North Rim main area. And once you get there, it's like the Walhalla Lookout, and you can park there, and then you simply walk across the street, and then you walk down this dirt trail that's less than a quarter mile, something like that, and you come across this very small area of ruins. These are known as the Walhalla Ruins. They're the site of an old Native American tribe called the Walhalla. It was spectacular seeing that, even though it was a very small area, but these were home dwellings that have existed for several hundred to thousands of years, and they're still there, and you can very much explore them. And then, the giant black raven that we saw was pretty creepy when we were going down a trail. But we also got to see something pretty spectacular too at that location. When we were on the cliffside at the lookout, do you remember what we got to see?
It was a giant California condor.
Yeah, there was like a nest of condors down the cliffside, and there were these giant condors flying around. And I have never seen a bird that gigantic in my entire life. And that was a spectacular sight. Unfortunately, we didn't get any pictures or recording of it, but aside from seeing a bald eagle, this is like the next best thing in our book. So that was a spectacular sight. If you've never been to the Grand Canyon, we highly recommend going there. It's definitely a place where you can go and enjoy the giant aspect of thousands of years of nature taking its course. So Grand Canyon is definitely not so much haunted, but it's definitely a place that we explored and a place we'll return to in the future. And yeah, so after that we basically returned home, and that was the end of our trip. Now, the day after we came back, we went to Midsummer Scream and did the Halloween convention. But the week after that, and this is kind of a bonus that we didn't mention at the beginning of the video, but a week after, we met up with our good friend Don Staggs, and we went on a hiking trip along this place called Los Osos Park Trail. There are purported hauntings there. We actually went there a couple of years back. Haunted Peach, what did you experience when we went there at one of the areas of this trail?
The last time we were there, I experienced seeing a figure leaning against the tunnel wall.
Yeah, there's like a tunnel that is a couple of miles down the hiking trail, and we had gone there at night, and Dawn and Haunted Peach had rounded the corner to head to the tunnel, and they both saw a shadowy figure at the end of the tunnel. Later during that moment, I had taken several pictures from the other end of the tunnel and had purportedly captured what appeared to be a shadow figure moving through the tunnel. And you can check out those pictures on hauntedmario.com. Just look up on our Paranormal Files tab and check out the secret location investigation. So we returned to this location, and we had a secondary opportunity to do another investigation. We did something. We returned back to the tunnel. We tried something different. At some point, several of us were inside of the tunnel, and I decided it would be interesting and a good idea to try to communicate with the spirit by coming up with a secret word, telling it to one person, and then seeing if a potential spirit could say it to another person in the group, and then that person could then, tell me the first word that pops up into their head, and hopefully it would match the secret word that I had spoken to only one person. So I know that sounds really confusing, but what I'm about to share with you is something that we captured during that moment. So I'm going to play a clip for you, and this is an audio clip of me speaking the secret word to the person. Now I whispered the word to this person, and no one else was able to hear it. So listen very closely after I whisper the word, and you'll hear something like a voice that comes through. Here it is. I'm thinking of a secret word. Can you go over and tell it to Dawn? I'm going to tell it to Karen, and I want you to go tell it to Dawn. Whispering. Okay, now go tell Dawn the word. I'm thinking of a secret word. Can you go over and tell it to Dawn? I'm going to tell it to Karen, and I want you to go tell it to Dawn. Whispering. Okay, now go tell Dawn the word. I'm thinking of a secret word. Can you go over and tell it to Dawn? I'm going to tell it to Karen, and I want you to go tell it to Dawn.
whispering. Okay, now go tell Don the word.
Okay, that was the audio clip, the full audio clip of that moment. Now what we're going to do is isolate just the EVP itself and have a listen and try and see if you can figure out what is being spoken here. Here it is. Okay, that was the isolated EVP clip. Now you can definitely hear a whispered voice come through and say something. Now you'll hear me whisper the word disaster. Now when I was doing this, no one else was whispering. So no one else was really contaminating the audio itself. So there's no way that someone else could have said it without me acknowledging it. So this came through and I didn't hear it at the time this was found upon review of the recording. Now, Haunted Peach, what does it sound like this potential spirit is saying after I say the word?
Sounds like it's repeating it, disaster.
Yeah, it sounds to us we're of the opinion that it's repeating the word disaster. So when we tried this experiment and I was asking everyone else afterward, you know, what's the first word that comes to into your mind? No one said the word disaster. It was only this audio clip of seemingly a spirit saying disaster that came before we officially started the experiment. This was after me just speaking the word to the one individual that would keep it secret. Take from it what you will. It's really the only real piece of audio data that we have from that particular investigation that was worthy of sharing with you, but we thought it would be cool to share it with you as a bonus. Yeah, it's very prolonged. This was way back in August, and I know we've been very delayed on getting these videos out, but yeah, you all have to understand that from September all the way through the end of the year is a very busy time for us, and we've been working and we've had all kinds of other events and different things that we've been participating in that have taken a large amount of our time, so it's very hard for us to get to do these podcast videos. But that was a look back at our Ghosts of America road trip. It was definitely a rough 2017, but this was one of the biggest highlights of not only of our paranormal adventures, but just the biggest adventure we've ever undertaken at any point in the 13 years that Haunted Peach and I have been together. Haunted Peach, what are your lasting impressions of the overall road trip that we took this past summer, and do you look forward to perhaps doing another road trip like this in the future?
The lasting impressions are not only some of the places that we visited, but how much more green there is everywhere else but here. Some of the stops and locations that we did, how much more green it was over in Tennessee and Kentucky, how beautiful it was over there. Yeah,
it was definitely more vibrant in the other states as far as alluding to how much more green. It's kind of like the grass is greener on the other side scenario. Definitely made us think about the possibilities of us moving to eastern states just because of how beautiful it is out there. I mean, some of the things that stood out to me in general were just seeing the countryside. The Rocky Mountains were amazing to see. The sunsets that we got to see in various states. I mean, in Texas. So I'll show you a video just now of this spectacular sunset that we saw in Texas the day before we went to Fort Phantom Hill. The thunderstorms that we encountered, the history that we learned at all of the different locations that we went to, the people that we ran into who were very nice and courteous. The one place that we managed to go to we wanted to try some authentic barbecue, and we went to this place called Split Tree Barbecue. It's located in southern Kentucky, and this was after our trip to the Bell Witch Cave. It was the first stop before we headed out to Louisville, Kentucky, to go to the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. And so Split Tree Barbecue, not only was there the southern hospitality with the owners there, he even shared a ghost story with us of his own from that location. Haunted Peach, what do you think about the food that we ate there?
It was so good. It was nothing I've ever had before. I don't know what it is exactly that it does to his food, the marinade, the beans, even his cobbler, everything was just so good.
Yeah, it was the first time I had ever tried peach cobbler. Holy crap. It was so freaking good that I had felt like I had never lived before. Because the food was so amazing, the atmosphere was great, and it was just a great time overall. This entire trip gave us a massive sense of adventure and freedom, and just being able to enjoy all of it, from the highs of checking out the haunted locations that we got to in Waverly Hills Sanatorium, to the lows like the disappointment of Roswell, running over a freaking skunk and having our car stink for the better part of a day and a half. I mean, things like that, but definitely got to go outside of our comfort zones. I had to face my fears on more than one occasion, especially with spiders, and it was a spectacular trip, one that I'll always cherish. And what do you say, Haunted Peach? Should we take another road trip?
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna look at doing a different road trip, but definitely one that's cross country, and one with more time to explore the places that we want to go to. So this is our final podcast of 2017. Again, 2017 was a rough year, but we definitely had this gem that we have held on to through the last half of this year, and it's the biggest highlight of our year. Again, we dedicate this podcast to the memory, the adventurous memory of Diane Maldonado, and to the loving, honorable memory of my grandmother, Elda. And we love both of them. We know that they are resting in peace and in paradise. And for the last time in 2017, we are very happy to bring you insight into all things paranormal. And just as always, happy hauntings. Happy New Year, everyone.